I invite you to take your seats. Good morning to everybody. We're about to start. Good morning, dear colleagues. Let's begin our deliberations on the fourth plenary of SBSTTA. This morning we have in our agenda the consideration of 4 CRP documents. We begin with 2 CRPs on item 6, which will be CRP 2 on conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity, which we began on Wednesday afternoon, and CRP 4 Rep 1 on EPSAS, followed by CRP 11 on the monitoring framework, item 3, and CRP 12 on biodiversity and health, item 9. And if we can, we will also follow with some L documents. It's a very ambitious agenda. Therefore, we need to be very efficient, and I count on your kind cooperation and flexibility. So we will begin today by picking up where we were left off last Wednesday morning on CRP 2 on conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity. We were only able to make it as far as paragraph 3, and we still have 12 paragraphs left in this moment. I wish to remind parties that there was initially one pre-session document prepared for this agenda item, and that when it was discussed in the plenary during part 1 of SBSTTA-24 last year, 22 parties and 11 observers provided input. On the basis of the numerous statements delivered, the 2 sets of draft recommendations contained in the pre-session document were split in 2 separate CRP documents. Thus, in our session today, I urge you to avoid raising new issues that have not been previously discussed. We had reached paragraph 3, Now I open the floor on paragraph 3 of CRP2 for any additional comments, but I'll ask the Secretariat to read that paragraph as it is now with the latest insertions when we suspend the session. Please, Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 3 currently reads as follows. Urges parties and invites other governments to take action to conserve and sustainably use marine and coastal biodiversity to implement the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, including through enhancing the conservation, protection, restoration, and sustainable use of marine and coastal ecosystems, particularly the most vulnerable marine ecosystems, in accordance with the need to effectively protect at least 30% of the global oceans, addressing threats and pressures such as marine plastic litter and illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, and conserving and sustainably using marine genetic resources, as well as supporting appropriate access to marine genetic resources and the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of their utilization within the jurisdictional scope of the Convention and its protocols, and recognizing the role of Indigenous peoples and local communities in conserving and sustainably managing marine and coastal biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So with this understanding, I open the floor for comments on paragraph 3 only. I have Chile, followed by Switzerland and Jamaica.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Yeah, we would like to support the addition as regarding action as it currently reads, and also the inclusion of the most vulnerable ecosystems and the evidence highlighting the need to protect at least 30% of the global ocean. We would like to suggest adding urgently before addressing threats and pressures, and then we would like to suggest the following wording. So we will read, urgently addressing threats and pressures, comma, such as plastic pollution, deep sea mining, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, and bycatch, overfishing, comma, harmful fishery subsidies, and climate change effects. And then it will read as it is right now. We believe that it's important to address these threats and pressures, and also to consolidate the language regarding plastic pollution with the UNEA 5 resolution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chile. And I will ask to all participants. This is probably the document that will take the longest in this morning. Please avoid giving preambular information and statements. Go straight to the language you want to include, exactly where I ask you please to repeat. I mean, I want to avoid to ask you for 3 times to introduce your language. Please say exactly in which line, which words, so Secretary can, and everybody can understand what you want. So please repeat your insertions so Secretary can adequately take them, please. Microphone to Chile.
I didn't catch that. You want me to read it again? Yes. Okay, thank you. So...
Sí, Chile. Por favor, indique exactamente.
Please tell us exactly which words in which line.
But I can do it again. In the, I think it's the 5 line, after what it currently says, at least 30% of the global ocean, we will say, we will add urgently before addressing threats and pressures. So we'll read, urgently addressing threats and pressures, comma, such as plastic pollution, comma, deep sea mining, comma, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and bycatch, comma, overfishing, comma, harmful fishery subsidies, and climate change effects, comma, and then it will read as it is currently, and conserving and sustainable using. That will be all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would like to establish a practical practice. Let's say, is anybody opposing to this new language? Raise your hand. Okay, I see hands. That insertions that suggest language from Chile will be in brackets. So let's move on, and please no comments on favor or against what Chile said. That language is there and will be with brackets in order to be more efficient. Now I'll give the floor to, according to my screen, to Jamaica, followed by France and Argentina.
Morning, Chair. Jamaica would like to keep the text on sustainable fishing, and in the original text it was line 4 after marine plastic. Thank you.
Thank you. France, followed by Argentina and Canada.
Thank you, Chair. So line 4, after coastal ecosystems, we would like to add the following. Particularly important for biodiversity, and noting the evidence highlighting the need to protect at least 30% of the global ocean, comma, urgently addressing threats and pressure such as pollution, including plastic pollution, comma, excess nutrient, comma, anthropogenic underwater noise, comma, hydrocarbons and pesticides, deep sea mining, ocean acidification, and climate change effects, including deoxygenation, invasive alien species, and unsustainable fishing, including overfishing, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and bycatch. So that was sent as well to the Secretariat to help with the notes.
Thank you, Franz. And as I said, let's try not to include new text that was not in the first reading. This is complicating too much, and with so long introductions is quite difficult. We got that. My suggestion is to include as a new paragraph, alter it together, the whole piece, and please help us not to include new language at this point. And we're going to be marking all this. If there is no agreement, immediately in brackets to continue. So we'll put it in as an alt sentence. Yes, Switzerland was in the list, but then disappeared in my screen and came back again. So I'll give the floor to Switzerland, followed by Argentina and Canada. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and there seems to be a problem with the system. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. As you said, I was in the list after Chile. We are not going to make a text proposal. We would like to help you to ensure that this will not be the longest agenda item of this session, but the shortest. Because let us be very frank, when we were planning for that meeting in Geneva, and when Switzerland was offering to offer the space that it could take place here, our first understanding was that this will be the meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group to work forward on the Global Biodiversity Framework, which will be the key success factor for the upcoming COP. But then as the SBSTTA and SBI was not able to meet, we were convinced that we should also add a week so that SBSTTA and SBI can also continue the work and then feed into the open-ended working process as it was agreed upon by us. And now the schedule was changed, and now it seems that we're using most of the time for SBSTA and SPI items, which are important, which are very important. But let us remind the key success factor of the COP will be the Global Biodiversity Framework and DSI. So we really need to progress on that, and we need to use the time here wisely and focusing on the issues where we have to deliver. There are many items which are important on SBSTA, on SPI, but which are not directly linked to the Global Biodiversity Framework. But we have in SBSTA and SPI to deliver also our input into that other process. And we are challenged now with setting priorities. Listening to the debates on some of these issues, I sometimes have the impression some parties believe that the horn of the unicorn is white, the other believes it's gray, others thinks it's golden. All these views might be very important, but we will not be able to solve and develop a common view now. Just what we have experienced now in the first minutes makes it clear we are not able to bring that text to conclusion here in Geneva because parties do not feel sufficiently pressed to do so. Therefore, our recommendation would be simply to use the text as it is now and send it to the COP. So that we close the discussion of this item, that we agree these issues are important, we agree we cannot solve it here in Geneva despite all our willingness, parties are not yet ready to agree on it, so let's send it as it is to the COP, and if we take that approach on all the items that are not directly related to the Global Biodiversity Framework and DSA, we will be able to have a lot of time to work on the wording of the goals, on the wording of the targets, on the wording of some of the elements that really have to be delivered to the open-ended working group so that it can deliver on what will be the key success factor at the COP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Perez. Just give me a few seconds for consultations on your proposal. Thank you for waiting. And certainly, I also share concerns on the progress and the importance to get good outcomes from the whole meeting, including SBSTTA and SBI job. This can only be possible if really parties apply discipline in our deliberations. As you know, the current document reflects language that has been expressed in part 1 of SBSTTA last year. So the usual practice is not to include additional language as we're doing now. So I invite you not to include additional language, to work as fast as possible with this document. If in this case we send the document straight to the COP, this will be very difficult for coming to address with all of this. So my invitation is not to include new language. Let's go through the document to see if we can fix something. Otherwise, just to move and to send it as soon as possible. Switzerland's asking for the floor.
Thank you again for giving the floor again, and sorry to come back. I was making a concrete proposal, and I would like to allow the parties to react to that proposal, and if parties agree to take the way proposed by Switzerland, then I would suggest that we take that way. So our concrete proposal would be to send these 2 CRPs to the COP, and I would be happy to get reactions from our party, from our dear colleagues, whether they are willing to engage on that way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. Yes, I understood your suggestion to send the document as it is, and at least for CRP2, then we can discuss later CRP4 rep, which I believe is pretty clean. So one question is if parties agree to send the document, but my personal view is that we can try to not to send with so many brackets this document to reduce the workload to the COP. I see Brazil asking for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I confess I'm a bit concerned on your approach because, as you just mentioned, CRP4 Rev 1 would be a clean test, and that's far from reality. I recall that we even had the opportunity to discuss this document in entirety in the contact group. It's the same as with the document we are now, and you're insisting on not presenting new language when you just have the opportunity on the virtual session to make a general statement on the broad agenda item in a 3-minute discussion. So of course it's impossible to raise all the issues. So of course there will be new language that will be proposed. If you're understanding, and I share the concerns of the Swiss delegation, and if you could have please 5 minutes of a pause here just to, we're still consulting other delegations. I would appreciate 5 minutes to take a deep breath and analyze what's in front of us, because my delegation is deeply concerned with your approach and your expectation on the work ahead. Therefore, I would ask just 5 minutes for us to understand better and have a better coordination with other delegations on the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Yes, yeah, I want to go one document at a time, not as a package in the case of Marine. So let's see, with document CRP2, there is a concrete proposal to send from Switzerland to send the whole document as it is for COP. Of course, you will have time as you request for consultations. That's one thing. Or if you have, or we can just go through the paragraphs and with not including any additional language. And then we will deal with CRP4, which I'll give an introduction and an explanation, and I have a suggestion to go forward. But okay, let's have a 5 minutes break for consultation, and I will listen to your proposals as well. Thank you. Colleagues, I invite you to take your seat and to know how deliberations are going.
Okay, thank you. You are a star.
Please take your seats.
You are a star.
We are wasting time of interpreters.
Which means they are not agreeing.
So I want to know if there is a resolution or you need more time. Muchas gracias. Veo que
Thank you very much. It appears that a specific proposal has been reached about the proposal made by Switzerland. Thank you for the individual dialogue groups. I give the floor to the delegation of Switzerland, please.
microphone to Switzerland, please.
Thank you very much, and thanks for allowing us to come together informally and to discuss possibilities for the way forward. There were really from all the groups countries coming together, and there was a joint understanding that this issue is important, and that it is important. That means also that we need also time to reflect on it, and that it is too early to move towards something that is considered to be a clean text, because we just didn't have the time really to present all the ideas, to think through all the ideas, and then also to discuss all ideas. And at the same time, we all felt that it is not an efficient use of the time if you use plenary meetings like that in order to compile different proposals. And it was also felt that the time here in Geneva will not be sufficient really to move towards a clean text. So we were thinking through what are the different possibilities to bring together all these different concerns, and most importantly also to give justice to all the legitimate different proposals that parties are working on to make that a robust outcome. Based on that, we concluded that the best way forward would be to invite all parties now to send in electronically their additional text proposals. We don't need a plenary in order to collect that. And that the Secretariat then, based on that, would establish a compilation, which is still available here in Geneva, so that parties informally can discuss about certain proposals, can exchange to better understand them. But the basic idea would be that this compilation would then be sent with a report of SBSTA to the COP, with a clear understanding that at the COP we will have the compilation as a whole will be bracketed to signal that this was not yet discussed. We still need a robust discussion. And the SBSTA report would also make very clear that early in the COP we will have the time to discuss substance on that. And another element that is important, we will gain time like that, but it is also important to underline in the report that we are not setting a precedent for the future. This is not, we do not want to set a precedent that whenever something is complicated, we send it to the COP. We would also have to highlight in the report the special circumstances in which we are. Starting with the COVID, that made it very difficult to have a proper, thorough discussions in a normal in-person SBSTA session. And then, in addition to that, the tremendous pressure under which we stand here in Geneva now to use maximum time on discussing the wording of some of the elements of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Like that, we think that SBSTA can deliver the best possible outcome to the COP, and making clear that at the COP we will have the time to have a full discussion of all different ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Switzerland, and all parties for participating in this dialogue to see a way forward. I fully share the concerns. We should also bear in mind, usually the process in our convention is to have the first reading, then the CRP reflecting different views, and then we go to an L document. We're still in the phase of a CRP document. We also should bear in mind that deliberations on marine issues were delayed 1 week because negotiations in New York. So that also is an additional pressure to deliberations on these two documents. I was thinking in something like that, but very carefully not to set a precedent in our business here. Of course, due to the lack of time, if the floor agrees, we can, instead of doing as we try to do quick here with this document, to receive suggestions, and those can be compiled into the L document. We are in a CRP now, just verifying that is adequately reflect all the text for the different paragraphs. So if there is an agreement of the room and if there is no objections, Secretariat can compile comments and prepare the L document for the final plenary to be sent to the COP. So that will be a good basis considering all the new proposals. Of course, there are new elements from the first reading to now that may be taken into account. So we can do that for both documents if you like. So to be sure, I mean, remember that CRP4, we went through 6 annexes with comments, still more annexes to be revised, and we cannot adopt, so we can put brackets on the operational part and receive more and send this to the conference of the parties. Do you agree to proceed in this way? If there is no objections in the floor, we can then ask Secretariat to compile comments received on both documents and then to prepare 2 L documents containing this, but not setting a precedent, just considering these special circumstances after COVID and also the week that we had to delay these businesses that prevent us to have more either contact groups or more things. There are no time for contact groups. There is no time for Friends of the Chair. So if you agree with this procedure, we can take this decision here and request Secretariat to prepare these 2 L documents with the comments received from parties. Is there any objection? Is there an objection there? Turkey, you have the floor.
We have an additional comment from the Turkish delegation. Yes, in general, we agree with the idea, but the problem is that there is an illogical side, irrelevant, because even if we compile all the comments, proposals from all sides, we haven't still discussed these reports in depth, because we still, on my part, for instance, as the head of delegation, I didn't, for some of the proposals, I can agree on, but I don't have the in-depth knowledge from the parties about their positions. So how can I agree on? And when it comes to the COP, I will present these ideas to the higher-ups so that we can make a political decision in the end. It's not about experts and scientists making a decision here, because at the COP, it will be a political decision. So in order for me to, I want to, as the head of delegation, I want to understand all sides of the argument so that I can make a proposal to my government that we can agree on this document, or we can agree on this wording of some parties' proposal. That's why this should be the way forward, but it still lacks the in-depth discussion that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Turkey. I understand, and maybe I forgot to say that all proposals that can be compiled will be in brackets. It's not meaning that is accepting anything, and we will need more time at the COP to analyze them more carefully. So it's not saying that we're accepting the text as they will be bracketed, so it will be time to analyze. We have no more time here in this meeting, unfortunately. So I hope the way forward suggests can be accepted for everybody to move on. With that understanding, all new proposals will be bracketed, so parties will have the opportunity to analyze them when these documents are sent for COP, and I hope that the COP can allocate adequate time to make the detailed discussions as needed by parties. With this understanding, can we approve this approach to receive comments, all in brackets, and the Secretariat to prepare 2L documents, not setting a precedent, just on these particular occasions? Then, if there are objections, please raise your hand.
It's okay.
I don't see hands raised. It's Denmark. Denmark, you have the floor, and then followed by Switzerland, who asked for the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, from a Danish point of view, we think this process has been really, really unfortunate. We didn't get the reading of the CRP2 when we had a virtual meeting. We didn't get the contact group that was scheduled for Saturday, and now we're not being able to discuss this here. And for Denmark, this is an important document with marine issues. It plays into the GBF, it plays into target 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 14. So we think this is a very unfortunate process that you are not giving the parties the time to actually come forward with their proposal. This is very reluctant that we are agreeing on this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Denmark. I understand your concern, but we're looking for ways to be practical. If we open the documents, we will need many sessions of the plenary, and unfortunately we don't have the time, and this will be also putting in problems the many documents we have forward. So I hope I can count with your understanding. I fully agree that, and you can also include that concern in the report of the meeting, which I fully share, but we need to find a practical way to move on. So Switzerland was requested for the floor, then Ecuador and EU. And please, let's try to make it more dynamic to take a decision and to move on, please.
Thanks a lot, and we fully share also your feelings, Mr. Chair, that this is unfortunate, but this is special circumstances. Just one element, I think it would be good if you would set very clearly a deadline until when parties can submit the text they have to be prepared for this session here, so that we know, you also know when the Secretary can compile the document. It could be this evening because parties are prepared. And then one other small element, I think, if this compilation is out already tomorrow during the day, I think the experts can meet informally and discuss certain of these proposals so that the time is not totally lost here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. I've been advised by the Secretariat, since we originally planned to discuss this document today, so it will be tonight, the deadline to receive comments. So I'm sure you are ready with your comments, so please send it today until tonight to the Secretariat. And I have, I mentioned Ecuador, followed by EU. And I'm not using the screen, Chile and Colombia. Ecuador, ¿tiene la palabra?
Ecuador, please. Thank you very much, Chair.
Along with the proposal, with the clear understanding that is on the exceptional circumstances and setting no precedents, but just wanted to take the opportunity, since you mentioned that one of the reasons being the delay that we have had because of the overlap with the ocean negotiations, BBNJ, particularly in New York, just to flag once again that for this same reason, we need to ensure that there is no overlap and not even a back-to-back between the calendar that is already set or announced informally for the COP and for the IGC-5, the continuation and supposed to be final negotiations of the BBNJ treaty. Not even the back-to-back, because that will be extremely dangerous and detrimental, and that this will be one of the effects or negative effects that this may provoke. So just to flag and register alert to the secretariats of both and the presidency of COP to avoid this overlap or back-to-back setting of the calendars. Thank you.
Gracias, Ecuador.
Thank you, Ecuador. Briefly, EU, Chile, Colombia, and Russian Federation online.
Microphone to France.
EU. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's the European Union talking this morning. So we really thank Switzerland for the nice report made after very constructive negotiations or discussions among parties during this break. We also thank the parties for their constructive and also innovative ideas. The only addition that we would like to propose to what Franz Perez has suggested is to add that SBSTA is requesting the Executive Secretary to conduct intersessional work on marine subject to the availability of resources for the reasons that my dear colleague from Denmark and others said, that there is really a willingness from the marine experts to continue the exchanges, and it may not be possible to do that here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, EU. I hope this will be adequately reflect on the L versions of these documents. So I'll give the floor to Chile, followed by Colombia and Russia. Chile tiene la palabra.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair.
The time constraints, and we are appreciative of the efforts that we are making here to try to make the best of our time. However, we understand this approach and we agree with it, under understanding that there will be sufficient time at the COP to have a proper discussion of this item. We haven't been able to discuss it. We have this document since May last year, and we haven't had a proper discussion about this. We had a contact group that was suspended, and we really need to have it to allocate time. So we would like to also have our concern, and now we think this is also very unfortunate in the report, and we can go forward with the understanding that there will be time for sufficient discussion. Also, I would like to seek clarification, because it was my understanding in the informal discussions that this will be the approach for all CRPs under SBSTA, all pending CRPs, and not just for the marine ones, and I would like to seek that clarification. Thank you.
No, we are talking only about the marine documents so far, because they're following different processes. I hope that the remaining two CRPs we can move quickly. There are good outcomes. So let's go one step at a time. Now we give the floor to Colombia, followed by Russia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. About the comments made by the government of Switzerland, we're grateful for the efforts that have gone into trying to find a way of making headway on these topics. We do, however, share the concern that was expressed by Turkey, Denmark, and Chile about the situation whereby we have not gone into depth in these documents during the negotiation. And this is a matter that the government of Colombia, I am the head of delegation, and we believe that they do not have the same weight as others in the discussion. We share that concern, and we would like to see our concern about this expressed in the report. We support the proposal that was made by the EU, intersessional work. I think that is necessary, not only submissions from parties, which is what we have been doing this year, without a substantial discussion of all of the elements that we have sent in. Thank you very much. Thank you, Colombia. I'd like to kindly ask you the following. If we have generally agreed the way forward, I have a number of delegations asking for the floor, but if we have agreed, let us proceed. They do not need to reiterate their concern or their support. Nobody is happy about what is happening, and that we haven't had enough time, but we do have to make headway. I still have a list of speakers, and I would invite you to help us move forward. And if you can withdraw your name, I have Morocco, Jamaica, and a number of others. We must hurry.
Egipto tiene la palabra.
Egypt, now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After listening to all of these interventions, we strongly approve your way of looking at things as well, taking into consideration all of the intervention that made. Time is not in our favor, and we have to go forward. So we may spend a little bit of time just only listening to even some new additions for a short period, if it is possible. Otherwise, let us go as we have agreed. Alternatively, Mr. Chairman, maybe on CAP we can spend extra day for regional consultations very specific to the marine issues, because this is very, very important to almost all countries in the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Egypt. There can be a suggestion for China. I forgot to mention that to give the floor to Russia online. Russia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're thankful for the fact that you can remember countries that are working online. This gives us an opportunity to also speak, though it is as the last in the waiting line. We are unable to be present in the room and to talk to colleagues, but the proposal made by the Swiss representative is acceptable to us. We agree with other delegations and you, Mr. Chair. This shouldn't set a precedent. And we have a specific wish to the Secretariat so that we can to present our comments before the end of this day, and we would wish to see a document including the text of the 3 initial paragraphs as they look right now, so that can make our task of making comments easier at the end of the day. And we would be willing to review several options as proposed by the EU for our work in the intersessional period. So we would like to see more specific proposals on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Russia. I'll give the floor to Morocco, followed by Philippines, Belgium, and Jamaica. Please be very quick. We need to move to next documents. We have general understanding and agreement in the way to proceed. Morocco?
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really regrettable that we cannot work on the basis of CRPs, but there is an act of God, force majeure, that imposes on us the procedure that you have adopted and that we fully support. We had a first version before this break, and we have accepted, as you suggested, that we only discuss the bracketed language. Sincerely speaking, the proposal by our host country, the Swiss ambassador, is totally unacceptable to us. When he took the floor for a second time, his second version was much more acceptable. Now, the report to be prepared by the Secretariat on the basis of a compilation of all the proposals and suggestions made by the parties present, will we be able to consider this report? This is my main question. I'm asking this because we know that if we send the 2 CRPs to COP as they are, COP will be overcharged, and usually we take away this kind of burden from COP, because this exercise would be too hard for a meeting like the Conference of the Parties. But we are facing an act of God, a force majeure, an exceptional circumstance, and we must accept the latest proposals that you made, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. I still have in the list Philippines, Belgium, Jamaica, and South Africa. So I close the list. We need to move, and if it's to reiterate agreement on the process and concerns, I invite you for not taking the floor and to move forward. So Philippines, followed by Belgium. Please be very, very precise, very short, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. While the Philippines understands the need of expediency, the parties also need time to consult and review the documents to ensure that we all jointly produce sound documents that will stand master. To reach this balance, the Philippines proposes to enclose the entire CRP2 in brackets. Notwithstanding, of course, the submission of our colleague here from our host, this is our first opportunity to do face-to-face meeting, and I am alone in this delegation, and I don't have the luxury of time to produce documents that our parties have this at this meeting. So therefore, may I thank you very much for giving me this chance to voice the Philippines situation, and I hope that later on, the Philippines will be given a chance to produce another 3Bs so that this will address the problems that we have in Para 3. And thank you very much once again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. So all comments received by Secretary will be incorporated and shown in the L version of the document, and you will have also an opportunity at the COP to deal with this. Belgium, followed by Jamaica and South Africa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning to all. We've been listening very carefully to the suggestions that have come up here, and we think these are very interesting. However, we've not only been listening, we've also been looking at the schedule of the meetings. And we noted that for this afternoon and this evening, there is only scheduled one contact group for the open-ended working group, which normally, for most of this meeting, we've had meetings, 2 meetings in parallel for contact groups. Is there any compelling reason why we can't have another contact group this afternoon on this particular item? Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. This is already an agreement with the co-chairs and the chairs, and on the case of the open-ended working group, it's an agreement to have them in plenary, and the only options to have contact groups together were among SBSTA and SBI, as you saw in the whole program. Actually, yesterday, it was no contact groups from SBSTA, just SBI, so this is the way we agree among the three bodies. That's the reason. So let's be efficient in the time we have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I kindly request that there is a consultation with the chairs to reconsider under these very peculiar circumstances that we are now under. I think that reconsidering that earlier decision would definitely be something that would open up time for the parties to discuss this matter, as so many delegates have voiced the importance of discussions on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Belgium. I think the best way to address this point is at the Bureau meeting tomorrow morning, so we can have a more wide discussion. Jamaica, and last speaker, South Africa. Jamaica, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Jamaica would just like to support the proposal by the EU, as this will reduce the work of the COP. But if this is not possible, we would like to ensure that enough time is allocated to the COP, at the COP, for discussion on these issues. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. To be brief, South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa, on behalf of Africa, supports the proposal of Switzerland. We need to focus our time on developing the framework. The document CRP4 in particular is full of issues that are not of a technical nature and we feel can't be dealt with here in a small amount of time. So we endorse the concerns of Denmark and Chile, Colombia, Egypt and others that adequate time be provided for these marine issues at the COP. And we also support Philippines in that, in bracketing the entire CRP2 for now. We'll be submitting our comments on the documents as you have invited. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, South Africa. Last speaker, China, host country for next COP.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Chinese delegation would like to thank you once again for your very able leadership. And actually, we understand right now it's a very difficult time. And for all of us, we are working, of course, we are working so hard, trying to move forward the same direction. And especially, I believe the previous interventions have expressed a very clear idea that is specifically we need to have something right here in Geneva, and also we need to have a very focused discussion, and priority comes first. So I believe this is a general understanding that is for the GBF itself. Maybe that will be the most important one. Of course, we are not supposed to say, actually, Mr. Chair, of course, you are taking the most important job among all the others. So we appreciate all the efforts, and also we understand all the work has been taking the utmost efforts. We'd like to say that is how could we get our focus on the most, desired one for the international community and what for the global, global world. For the we are also looking forward to, this very important outcome, especially as host country. We like to very much to see a very expedient, speedy outcome. That is GBF, for example. We like to strongly support intervention might be the distinguished delegate from Switzerland and many others. So in this regard, Mr. Chair, we strongly support and also hope you can lead us, to get us a very structured discussion and also to focus a little bit on the most important. We hope we can get our efforts, concerted efforts, and focus on the discussion and to skip a little bit, to spare a little more efforts for the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. Be sure that we are doing our best in all bodies to give good outcomes for coming. We're still working on it. I'll give the floor to Secretary for some clarifications.
Thank you. So if parties could send their text submissions to secretariat at cbd.int, and in the subject line indicate this is substar item 6 marine. That will help us make sure that we keep track of all the submissions. And I understand the agreed deadline would be midnight tonight, local time.
Excellent. With this understanding, we will proceed with these two documents for CRP2 and CRP4 to be turned into L documents by the Secretariat based on comments also received from now until midnight. Now, let's move to CRP11 on the monitoring framework. So I'll give you 1 minute or two to switch places and delegates to move to monitoring framework item 3. Okay, colleagues, we will now take up CRP 11 on the monitoring framework, item 3. We will begin with a report from the co-chairs of the contact group on this item, which has met 5 times, most recently on Wednesday night. So, Mr. Andrew Stott from UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Alfred Otung Ibaya and myself were the co-chairs for this contact group. We met 5 times during the SBSTTA session, and during this time we conducted a technical review of all the headline indicators. We discussed new indicator proposals for the various goals and targets, and we discussed the definitions and criteria of headline indicators, complementary and component indicators in paragraphs 1 to 7 of the non-paper. The contact group heard more than 500 interventions during the sessions. We heard interventions assessing each indicator for its relevance, technical feasibility at national and global levels, and its readiness to be used. We also captured a wide range of suggestions for new headline indicators, modifications to existing indicators, and suggestions for moving certain headline indicators to the component level or vice versa. Good progress was made. However, there is still some bracketed text regarding the definitions and criteria for the indicators. Some of this is due to items pending resolution in SBI. 2 paragraphs, 4 and 5, were not discussed in the contact group. From this session, there are now 3 appendices documents. Firstly, a revised language on definition and criteria for headline, component and complementary indicators. Secondly, a co-chair's summary of the assessment of the existing headline indicators. And thirdly, a list of alternative or additional indicators proposed by parties. The first appendix contains text that will need to be integrated into the future monitoring framework in document L2. The second 2 will be the basis for further intersessional work and the completion of the monitoring framework, which will need to be aligned with the ongoing discussions in the working group on the wording of the goals and targets. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stott and Mr. Otung Ibaya. Thank you so much, and all the members of the contact group for devoting your time and energy on this effort over 5 evenings. As you said, there were more than 500 contributions. Really, it was an intense and a technical exercise, which is supposed the essence of SBSTTA. Thank you very much for that work. So you will recall that the contact group on this was mandated to further consider and develop the monitoring approach for the post-2020 framework contained in the non-paper, and that once approved, as was said, it will be annexed to the draft recommendation contained in document L3, right? Given that the open-ended working group is still discussing the goals and targets, and that the contact group assess headline indicators based on the first draft of the framework, and that parties also propose new indicators that also need to be assessed, there is a need for intersessional work between now and COP to develop the annex mentioned in L3, so still not existing, that annex. As a result, this document, CRP 11, before us, contain a request from SBSTTA to the Secretariat to do technical review. So the CRP, as explained by Andrew, has a draft recommendation with 3 paragraphs and 3 appendices. Appendix 1 is the proposed monitoring framework for the post-2020, where we have 5 paragraphs, 2 pending. Appendix 2 is the co-chair's summary and proposed list of indicators for consideration in developing the monitoring framework. And Appendix 3, the list of proposed indicators for inclusion as headline indicators. Remember that the L3 document contains a draft recommendations to COOP to adopt a new framework, which include the monitoring framework as an annex currently empty, still empty. As indicated in the footnote, the monitoring framework will be prepared after this technical review that has to be done intersessionally. This CRP, once approved, will be integrated into document L3, includes a request to the Secretariat to conduct a technical review based on the outcomes of SBSTA, including the structure of the framework, the report of the contact group co-chairs on the assessment of headline indicators. That was a lot of work, using the traffic light system, and the list of new indicators proposed during the sessions of the contact group. I propose that we review only the 3 paragraphs in the recommendation and the Appendix 1. As for Appendixes 2 and 3, I propose that we do not review them because they represent the co-chair's summary of the work done in assessing indicators and the compilation of the new ones proposed by parties, which will form the basis for the technical review. Moreover, Appendices 2 and 3 are only available in English at the moment, and it will be available in all languages shortly. So there is no reason to go to these last 2 appendices. They are going to be used by the Secretariat to prepare the new version once we have a clear idea on goals and targets as a result of the work of the post-2020 working group. So this is like a chicken and egg situation, but we will use this useful information for Secretariat to prepare this revision. With this, I now open the floor for any comments on the 3 operative paragraphs on this recommendation. Are there any comments on paragraph 1, starting with take notes? I see no request. I open the floor for comments on paragraph 2. Start with take notes of the summary and proposed list of indicators. I see no request. I open the floor for paragraph 3 on request the Executive Secretary to conduct, in consultation with parties, this technical review. I see Brazil, followed by Costa Rica and Argentina. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulate both the colleagues for this contact group, because it was a very peculiar situation of being discussing hypothetical indicators to non-agreed goals and targets, and I'm happy with their guidance and the result that you had in these 5 sessions. But on this particular paragraph that is of SBSTA, we would request an amendment that would read, requests the Executive Secretary to compile comments from parties, other governments, and relevant stakeholders on a technical review, and then it goes until to the end of the paragraph, and then it would read after the post-2020 GBF, and to make the compilation available for consideration by COP15. We are concerned about transparency and inclusivity here. There are several stakeholders that have been contributing to this process. I think they should recognize their available inputs, and also on matters of transparency, so we could be clear aware of where these inputs are coming from. So that's the intention of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Is there any opposition to language proposal by Brazil? Please raise your hand. I don't see hands. I see Egypt. So there are two insertions. One is compile comments from parties, other governments, and relevant stakeholders in the first part. And then at the end, the second part on the compilation. Very quickly, Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, it is fine that you compiled all of this information, but without technical review, it will be a problem, especially when you go to CAB. When you go to CAB, we need something very, very, very solid. Otherwise, it will be a problem for us. Thank you.
Just a clarification from Brazil. So is calling the compilation, but also and to conduct the review, right? Because this work has to be done. I mean, it's not replacing, it's to make it more specific that you want this compilation that can be annexed, the compilation for the COP, but the analysis, the technical review has to be done to look for congruency with the outcomes from the open-ended on new formulation of goals and targets. That exercise has to be done. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to clarify. Our understanding is that it would not be the role of the Secretariat to review. It's up to the parties to review, so that's why we're requesting the compilation, so parties would be better understanding and a broad consideration of different views on this, and then it would be up to parties to prepare this technical review on indicators. It's not the role of the Secretariat. Thank you.
Comments on this insertion? I see that it was coming from Egypt. I would like to seek more comments from the floor. Costa Rica, followed by Argentina.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, says the delegate. We believe that in the consultations in the contact group, we have generated very important information on what the parties consider or how we see the implementation of these headline indicators. And we believe that this is very important. It plays a very important role. And this part should reflect the follow-ups. There are some indicators that have a developed methodology and some others that are less developed. That's why we, after the words draft recommendations in the fifth line, would like to include focusing on a more comprehensive analysis
of the headline indicators that already have a methodology in place and the feasibility for parties to implement them. So it will be to getting more analysis of the information that we produce during these contact groups about how parties see the use of those indicators and the feasibility to use it. And in the same line, we would like to propose another paragraph that it will read as follows. Also request the Executive Secretary to consider the concerns from parties related to the headline indicators to be developed, and in this sense, urges that these concerns are communicated to the relevant institutions developing such indicators. Since we already are considering indicators that are under development, it will be really important that that the institutions that are working on those, developing those indicators, get the information, the feedback from these contact groups.
Por favor, puede repetir el...
Could you kindly repeat the new paragraph?
Request the Executive Secretary to consider the concerns from parties related to the headline indicators to be developed. And in this sense, urges that these concerns are communicated to the relevant institutions developing such indicators.
Thank you, Costa Rica. Doy la palabra a Argentina, seguida del Reino Unido y Suiza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we support the need to compile the comments. And for us, it is clear that we need to move ahead towards having a document for consideration at COP, but at the same time, as our colleagues from Brazil pointed out, we still don't have a clear GBF to refine these indicators. Hence, we believe that it's necessary to have some work done before the COP can consider this. So I don't have exact language right now, but what Costa Rica mentioned on focusing the work on the headline indicators and also taking note of or considering the concerns of parties should be part of this decision or this recommendation, because what we have are 2 appendices, which are a great work, great task achieved by the co-leads, but still it's the compilation that was carried out by the co-leads. So we believe that we are still much work to be done on this. Somehow this should be reflected in this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. Well, my understanding on this paragraph is exactly that this technical review proposed to be done by the Secretariat is taking the outcomes of the appendix with the assessment of indicators, the list of new indicators proposed by parties. These 2 were not negotiated. It's just a compilation and are the views. But this is a very good material that needs to be looked against the outcomes of the open-ended working group on goals and targets. So, because these were based on draft 1. So we need to see the new face of the outcomes of goals and targets. And we need to see if this match or not, and also with the new proposed one. So this exercise has to be done. The suggestion is by the Secretariat, and of course, compiling comments, additional comments from parties, and we need to have a basis to work at the COP. So this is the idea for this technical review, to make a proposal on this, and then the COP will have the opportunity to analyze more carefully, taking the benefit of the exercise done here at this substance. I hope that clarifies why we did both, to keep receiving comments, but also to have this technical review to generate, as I said again, this is a chicken and egg situation, and we take some steps, but we need to see how it looks, and we need more feedback from parties. But we need a document as a basis for the COP. I hope that is understandable, and with the addition of Costa Rica to raise some of the concerns, this is the way forward. I think this clarify, and also for some comments from Brazil, that this analysis has to be done. It can be many activities in between, from now to COP, workshops, forums, whatever, so we need more feedback, but we need to have one concrete proposal taking into account all these elements. So that's why, to my understanding, this is reflected already when we are asking the Secretariat to do this technical review and to prepare what will be the annex of document L3. So that annex will not be ready after this meeting, will be prepare during the intersessional period, and before the COP, we will have a concrete proposal. I hope that is clear for everybody. That's been the spirit since the very beginning. Now I'll give the floor to UK, followed by Switzerland and Egypt.
Thank you, Chair. And like you, we're taking note of these comments and trying to work out what's the process going forward. And clearly, having comments from parties could be valuable, but if we understood or recorded the intervention from Brazil correctly, it sounded like comments on the technical review. It seems to us the sequence that needs to happen is perhaps parties should be given the opportunity to provide comments on the annexes to this document, which the Secretariat could combine. These can then feed into a technical review to be conducted by the Secretariat. And in this respect, if there was an opportunity for a technical workshop with the participation of experts that was regionally balanced and they had the full involvement of parties and so on, we would be willing to support that. And then after that, the outcome of that technical review, perhaps with a workshop, then goes to the COP and parties can then analyze it and see what they think of it. I think that's the sequence that we kind of understand. So I think the issue is trying to put that into words. So perhaps it could read, request the Executive Secretary to compile comments from parties, other governments, and all relevant stakeholders on the annexes of this document. However, I'm not quite sure of the right phrasing for that. But then to continue and to undertake a technical review of the proposed indicators and continuous thereafter. And I think it would then say at the end, and to make the outcome of this process available for consideration by the Conference of the Parties. So I think, Chair, maybe the wording isn't quite right, but that is the sequence of events that we think would work and would give parties a chance for involvement and full participation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. I'm also on the same understanding about the sequence. I also invite you to take a look to the footnote on page 1. It says that as reference in paragraph 1 on document L3, this annex will be finalized by the Conference of the Parties at the 15th meeting on the basis of Appendix 1 and the outcome of the technical review referring to paragraph 3, the one we are now, and this recommendation ensuring alignment with the final version of post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. But of course, with your session is including technical workshops, for example, that can provide more inputs to this thing. Can you read that? For clarification to everybody, I will ask Secretariat to mention the paragraph as it is so far with amendments.
Request the Executive Secretary to compile comments from parties, other governments, and all relevant stakeholders on the Appendix 2 and 3, and to conduct in consultation with parties a technical review of the proposed indicators of the monitoring framework for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, building on the work done at the second part of the 24th meeting of SBSTTA, as contained in Appendices 2 and 3 of the present draft recommendation, focusing on a more comprehensive analysis of the headline indicators that are already in place and the feasibility of parties to implement them, as well as the work of the Working Group for the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and to make the compilation and the outcome available for the consideration by the Conference of the Parties at its 15th meeting. And then there's also the second paragraph from Costa Rica.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I'll give the floor to Brazil, even I have a long list because this is in relation with your session to see if we are in the same line.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brazil is really concerned that we're requesting too much from the Secretariat and we're overstretching them. We've requested a global draft action plan on health. We've been requesting help with global communication. There are several global action plans that we request the Secretariat to do. And of course, the more we ask them to do, more delays there are in the documents and more mistakes appear in the documents, what's only natural. And Brazil is really concerned on preserving the credibility of the Secretariat. And I think that should be a huge concern of all parties, that we should not ask and expect the Secretariat to come with documents and work that they are not able to fulfill. So therefore, Brazil cannot agree that the Secretariat to make this technical review. We don't see that they have actually the technical capacity to do so. And in order to preserve their credibility, we would request that this should be considered by all parties. There will be a lot of work to do on the COP. We have short time, and let's keep our expectations real on what's feasible. And so having this cautious approach and willing to preserve the Secretariat's credibility as a whole, we would prefer not to ask them to fulfill tasks that we should recognize that goes beyond the technical means to deliver. Thank you.
I would like to hear reactions on this, because currently we have an empty annex to present to the COP with the proposal of the monitoring framework. We need to present something to make progress. And SOPs already provide an assessment and suggest new, and actually this is what we're going to see in the next paragraphs, in the next section. We need to provide a concrete proposal to COP. And currently we need to match with what we have done here and the latest version of the targets. So it seems to me that if we don't ask for this, it's still incomplete, the idea of what we are presenting to the Conference of the Parties, following Brazil's rationale. I'll give the floor to Switzerland, followed by Egypt and France.
Thank you very much. And we wanted to add in another element, and I will do that afterwards, but let me first just also react on that, as you were suggesting. And we understand the situation. It's a difficult one, because on the one side, what I've heard from the experts who have been working in that group, and that was really good work. They were progressing despite all the difficulties, and there's now a product available which is in Annex 1, and these headline indicators are not yet ready, but they were advanced, they have it matured, and it's certainly very important on the one side to maintain what has been developed and what has now also a partner ownership. And to avoid the situation that when we come back to the COP, we will look at the new text, because we have to build on what has been done here in Geneva. The second element, and this I also fully understand, that was also shared by our experts, is that there will be still some work needed from now up to the COP to be able to finalize these headline indicators. We need some reviews, some additional information about certain of these elements, and I think nobody also questions that this shall be needed. This will be needed in order to be able to finalize it at the COP. But we also hear very well what Brazil is indicating, that that task probably should not be done by the Secretariat. So it would be interesting to find out who could do that task. Should we establish a specific expert group so that it is these experts who are together developing proposals who will come back together with the document as it is now, so you can have a look at it. So I think we have to find a way to bring these three elements together. First of all, we want to maintain what you have done and the ownership around it, so we don't want to change these annexes. Secondly, we need some further technical work that allows us then to move forward more rapidly late in the process. And thirdly, we have to identify who would be the right institution, body, with the support of the Secretariat to do that. So that is just as a comment on the issue we're discussing before. Let me add also another element, which we also think should be added in that paragraph 3. Should I do that now, or would you like to finalize first the discussion about that topic? So going ahead. The other element is, we know that, of course, the open-ended working group desperately also needs the outcome of this working group, of this work here, to be able to continue to work on the targets and on the goals. Because at the end, they have to fit together the targets and the different goals. So it will be important, we think, that this work achieved here in Geneva, and also the work that may happen in the session now up to the COP, that this will also be made available to the open-ended working group for the consideration by the open-ended working group. Because I imagine that in Kunming, it will not be the COP as such, but it will be the open-ended working group who will pick up these elements and try to find a solution on that framework composed of goals, targets, and headline indicators. And therefore, we suggest to add at the end of this paragraph the formulation. Maybe just, do we want to make to finish that to after available for consideration by, we would like to add the open-ended working group for its further work on the global biodiversity framework and the conference of the parties. Do you want me to repeat it again? So, to make the outcomes available for consideration by, and the new text would be, the open-ended working group for its further work on the global biodiversity framework, and then we continue the conference of the party at this 15th meeting. Thank you very much, and apologies for being longer than 3 minutes.
Thank you, Switzerland. Of course, the outcomes of this will be useful for the open-ended, but so far my understanding is that the open-ended working group will finish also here in Geneva, or if there's foreseen a further meeting, so probably we can be more precise, saying that if it's going to be a for the 4 meeting, then makes sense. But I don't know if this is already officially agreed. Yes, go ahead, Switzerland. Microphone to Switzerland, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Our understanding is that the open-ended working group will continue to work also at the COP, and that at the COP it will continue to work on it so that it can then hand over the finalized package to the COP. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the clarification. So we need to find a way and clarity on who will do, on how this technical review is going to be done, right? So I need your help on this to have clarity. I mean, just a compilation will not enough, so we need to conduct this technical review to an appropriate manner. Meanwhile, I give the floor to France, followed by EU and Chile.
Oh, come on. Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Egypt was before. Sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Certainly, we support the process already described by UK, and we appreciate very much already the view of Switzerland. And I have no doubt that the Secretariat have technical capacity. They have experts from all over the world, and they have their own as well. So maybe we need now a little bit of clarification from the Secretariat in terms of what, can they do it on time, or they will need expert group in a way that they can support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Are you ready, Secretary, or maybe? Maybe. Okay, let's them think about it for a good response. Meanwhile, I'll give the floor to France, followed by EU and Chile.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support the statements that were made by the United Kingdom, Switzerland, but also Egypt just now. We would very much like to have some clarifications about what exactly is the CDB Secretariat's ability, capacity to do this. We've had some collective work that was done, substantial, but a lot needs to be done in view of the post-2020 global framework targets and goals. It's inevitable, I think, to discuss these subjects, and we are going to have a workshop to do this. We would be in favor of having some clarifications about what is feasible by the Secretariat. What would it consider itself able to do? We can look at alternatives if necessary, but it's a little bit premature to consider immediately now that we are going to make such a heavy burden for the Secretariat. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's the Secretariat that should speak about this to us now.
Thank you, Franz. You're right, and we also should be aware that COP is in August, so we need to do a lot of work in a very short time. Are you ready? So I'll give the floor to Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and certainly the Secretariat doesn't claim to have all the expertise that is needed on this very topic. Perhaps a better way of looking at this is that we would be able to facilitate a process that, of course, involved any additional inputs from parties, comments from parties that may go beyond what has already been made during this meeting and the 5 sessions of the contact group. We hear that there are parties willing to support a workshop that would include experts from parties as well as other experts. We would draw upon the capacities and expertise in the UN system, in particular of UNEP WCMC, among others. And essentially, we would facilitate a process to facilitate that expert review. And of course, we are here to serve the parties, and so we're ready to respond to other guidance or any specific guidance that this body may wish to provide to guide that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Seems like a possible option is to have a technical workshop where parties can actively participate. We have less than 4 months to do that and to present a proposal for the COP on the framework, on the monitoring framework, and also taking into account the outcomes from these meetings. But we need to put it in a good language. And so meanwhile, give the floor to EU and Chile, followed by Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The EU fully supports the intervention by the UK. We see it, the sequence in the same way, and we also fully support the intervention by Switzerland. There's clearly a need for intersessional work, and we think a workshop would be a very good idea. And also the idea by Brazil that parties can provide input, I think is also a good idea, but I think the technical review would be needed to be done by the Secretariat, based on the input that they receive, based on the output from this meeting, from workshops that might happen, and from input from parties, etc. But I think it's important that there's only one technical review that goes to the COP. So maybe I misunderstood the proposal by Brazil, but I think it's very important that it's not like the member states, the parties doing the assessment, right? It's the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. You will give the floor to Chile, followed by Canada and Paraguay.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. We, too, would like to support what was stated by the United Kingdom about the steps to be followed. And we support the idea of a workshop on this subject with the facilitation by the Secretariat. We would only like to suggest, without wishing to make this process more complex than it already is, that this review, in addition to being technical, should be scientific. In particular, because new indicators have been proposed that have not, in fact, been assessed from a scientific point of view. Therefore, in the first line of paragraph 3, I think it would have to actually read a scientific and technical review of the proposed, etc. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chile. I'm going to call on Brazil now. reacting to the last few comments, and then I'll continue with the speakers list.
Chairman, I apologize, but just caught my attention here that only the Conference of the Parties can task the Secretariat to do something. And here we're at the SBSTA requesting the Secretary. Is there a precedent on this? Could you clarify, please?
No, so far, I asked Secretariat, SBSTA has the authority to request work to the Executive Secretary. Yes, as well as COP. It's a subsidiary body and has the authority to do it. So we can entitle work to the Secretariat on the intersessional period before the COP. So that's why in some cases you can see recommendations from SBSTA that are divided into parts, some of them direct to the Secretariat and some others through the COP. So we can do it. I hope that clarifies, Brazil.
Thank you. I don't recall, but my understanding that these issues have even budgetary impacts, and then that's also our concern. For the sake of being constructive here, we'll continue the discussions, but I confess that I'm not entirely convinced that this is the right way to, according to the rules of procedures. But if there is this more general view of the parties on the need of this review, I appreciate the comments by the Secretariat on how it should be. So maybe you also need to look with more precision on how this would be conducted. And I would appreciate if either in a footnote or in this paragraph that we clarify how the process will go from Geneva to Kunming. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil, and thank you for your understanding. Yes, you can see there are many outcomes from SBSTA asking for work to the Secretary. Of course, it has budgetary implications. I hope will be offers to support this work timely. We have only 4 months, and this technical and scientific analysis is very important to provide a good basis for COP on the monitoring framework. I'll give the floor to Canada, followed by Paraguay and the UK, and I hope we can move because we need to see more paragraphs in the next session and also the other document on health. And we have a little bit less than 1 hour. So Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada finds the work of the monitoring framework as a critical piece for the global biodiversity framework, and it is clear to us, and we agree, that more intersessional work and review is needed on this before the COP. In this regard, building on the comments of the UK, Switzerland, Egypt, and France, we are wondering why the last sentence of paragraph 3 refers to the outcome of the discussions on the monitoring framework being made available directly for consideration of COP15 versus via the co-chairs of the open-ended working group. And this relating to decision 14.34, paragraph 19, which requested the co-chairs of the open-ended working group to integrate the guidance from SBSTA, SBI, and the ad hoc open-ended working group on Article 8J into a package to present to the COP. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I'll ask the Secretary to reflect on this and give them some time. Yeah, I also remember that in the meeting in Nairobi, the open-ended request or invited SBSTA to help on the monitoring framework. But let's see the best way to proceed. Meanwhile, Paraguay tiene la palabra, seguido de UK.
Paraguay, followed by UK and Colombia. We agree fully with the delegations who spoke before us that there's a lot of intersessional work that will have to be done to be able to make progress. Now, just looking at the indicators, we have 9 pages in this document of indicators. We're concerned about finding ourselves in a situation where the recommendations for the intersessional work will come without the parties' involvement. And we find ourselves in a situation at the conference where the states parties are just sitting down to negotiate the text. That would be putting us in a very difficult situation. Any work in the intersessional period would have to have significant involvement by the parties to be able to make sure that we do not arrive at the conference and find ourselves in a situation which is similar to the situation we found ourselves in earlier today, and which was the subject of considerable discussion. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Paraguay. Let's also not forget that in the end, this is going to be a sort of a draft of monitoring framework, because until such time as we finish with the COP in Kunming, we will not be able to see the final version of the targets and goals. And it's only afterwards, when we have established a working group to work on indicators, where SBSTTA 25, subsequent SBSTTA, will have to assess the monitoring framework. So that's a very long process, but of course, the more participation there is from parties, the better position will be in to present this to the COP. I'd like to say now it's the United Kingdom, followed by Mexico.
Sorry to come in again. We just wanted to emphasize, I think, that the way the Secretariat described the work was probably the best way. It's looking at the Secretariat facilitating the review and compilation of views from parties. And maybe we just need to make sure that word is changed, that rather than they conducting a technical and scientific review, they are facilitating it, because there is a broad network of experts out there in the parties and in other organizations. So we just wanted to make sure that word was changed, and I think that reduces the demand on them, I hope. And just to emphasize again, we're willing to support an expert workshop with good regional balance from the parties, and perhaps using the SBSTTA Bureau to advise to make sure that that any such workshop has a good balance of parties. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. We might remember that in the modus operandi of SBSTTA, there is a capacity to convey expert groups, considering a series of rules on regional balance and some other elements, and also SBSTTA Bureau can support in the selection of experts to keep these balances. This is usual practice in SBSTTA and is reflecting the modus operandi. So I see that this facilitation by the Secretariat for this technical analysis can also be advised by the SBSTTA Bureau. Colombia tiene la palabra, seguido de México.
Colombia has the floor, followed by Mexico and South Africa, the final speaker on the list. I thank you, Mr. Chair. We support the statement made by the United Kingdom and that of Switzerland. The proposal made by the workshop to the Secretariat is supported by some parties. Among the definitions of the objectives and targets, apart from that, we have a number of indicators. But as we see, some of the indicators have no methodology that would be a basis for discussion. That's why we suggest that this work on indicators should be integrated into the work of the open-ended working group. And any review then would have the necessary basis to significantly progress on goals and objectives, or targets and objectives, so that we can achieve a considerable progress in our work on indicators. Thank you. Chair, thank you, Colombia. Mexico has the floor, followed by South Africa.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My apologies, because you asked us not to repeat things, but our delegation has a concern that we would like to convey to the chair. Egypt, France, Colombia, and Canada spoke on this, and we thank the Secretariat for the guidance, in particular as a result of the workshop, to have it in writing, which we are now doing or working on. We would also like to suggest that we should make clear that this process will be taken into consideration by us. The time invested at the workshop, where all the parties are supposed to contribute actively or proactively, we suggest that the results of this workshop should be taken into consideration. Otherwise, an additional process would be requested with a very limited time available to the COP session, and we hope that the parties will be able to take into consideration the results of the workshop under our recommendation, so that the process is not open-ended and should be based on facts. Thank you. Thank you, Mexico. I hope that the Secretariat is working on this and will respond with a more specific language to this suggestion. South Africa.
Sorry, Chair. South Africa, on behalf of Africa, we understand the process as it was outlined by the UK, and emphasize the need for scientific and technical review, as also emphasized by Chile. And we do support a workshop as long as there's good regional representation from parties, as well as members from the Biodiversity Indicators Partnership with adequate geographic participation, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. Just give me a few seconds. Okay, thank you for waiting. Secretary is working very hard to have in a single paragraph all these ideas together. Seems reasonable to me, but please listen carefully if all ideas are adequately reflected. So I ask the Secretary to read it.
Request the Executive Secretary, under the guidance of the SBSTTA Bureau, to compile comments from parties, other governments, and relevant stakeholders on Appendices 2 and 3, and to facilitate a technical review, ensuring consultation with parties, including, subject to the availability of resources, through an expert workshop, including experts nominated by parties with regional balance. Of the proposed indicators of the monitoring framework for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, building on the work done at the second part of the 24th meeting of the SBSTTA as contained in Appendices 2 and 3 of the present draft recommendation, focusing on a more comprehensive analysis of high-level indicators that have a methodology in place and the feasibility of parties to use them, as well as the work of the working group for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and to make the outcome available for consideration by the Conference of Parties at its 15th meeting. And then we put a second paragraph which reads, also invites the co-chairs of the open-ended working group of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework to take this technical review into account in their ongoing work. And the paragraph from Costa Rica still remains as well.
Thank you, Secretariat. I hope you can agree with that formulation. Is considering the different elements to have a technical and scientific review, to make open to participation of parties, to compile comments, subject to resources to have this workshop geographically balanced, to send these outcomes also to the co-chairs of the open-ended working group, and also to be sent to the Conference of the Parties. Can we agree on that formulation? It's a long paragraph, but this, I believe, is adequately addressing the different concerns. Argentina, you have the floor. You probably will ask to say it again. But
indeed, Mr. Chair, please read it again slowly so we can know what it says. Thanks.
Please read your masterpiece.
It is long. Request the Executive Secretary, under the guidance of the SBSTTA Bureau, to compile comments from parties, other governments, and relevant stakeholders on Appendices 2 and 3, and to facilitate a technical review, ensuring consultation with parties, including, subject to the availability of resources, through an expert workshop, including experts nominated by parties with regional balance. Of the proposed indicators of the monitoring framework for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, building on the work done at the second part of the 24th meeting of the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice, as contained in Appendices 2 and 3 of the present draft recommendation, focusing on a more comprehensive analysis of high-level indicators that have a methodology in place and the feasibility of parties to use them, as well as the work of the working group for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and to make the outcome availability for the consideration by the Conference of the Parties at its 15th meeting. And the second paragraph reads, also invites the co-chairs of the open-ended working group of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework to take this technical review into account in their ongoing work.
Scientific and technical review.
Yes, scientific and technical review.
And then the paragraph from Costa Rica.
And the paragraph from Costa Rica still remains. Okay, I can read that one as well. That one says, also request the Executive Secretary to consider the concerns from parties related to the headline indicators to be developed, and in this regard request that these concerns are communicated to the institutions responsible for developing these indicators.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. I hope this language is acceptable, is following the sequence proposed. I believe it's addressing all points, and if this is acceptable, we can include it in the L version. I see Switzerland asking for the floor.
Thank you very much. We are still struggling with, first of all, thanks a lot for I think we're really trying to build in together different elements. There are a few things we are still like to have further clarification. The second paragraph, inviting the co-chairs. Our understanding would be that the co-chair, we do not only want the co-chairs of the open-ended working group to consider the outcome of that intersessional work, we also want the open-ended working group to take up the result of the work here in SBSTA and to use it and consider it and further develop it together with the targets and the goals, so that they can present, when they present the whole outcome at the end of the COP to the COP, that they can present an outcome that includes also the headline indicators. So we have the impression that the wording of that second paragraph would need to be changed a little bit.
I'll ask the Secretariat to clarify on this precise point, please.
So of course, I mean, we have the third meeting of the working group continuing in parallel with this meeting and with SBI. And the working group is due to report, co-chairs of the working group are due to report at the beginning of the second part of COP15. I'm not sure that we can, at this point, prejudge whether or not there may be A, an additional session of the working group, or B, whether the COP, how the COP will organize its work, and whether or not the COP will invite the working group to continue its work, or indeed invite the co-chairs to continue its work within the COP. I'm not sure that we want in SBSTA to get into the issues of how the COP will conduct its business and what it will ask the co-chairs to do at that time, and hence this formulation which would allow for that if that is what the COP so decides, but without prejudging what the COP will decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I invite Switzerland to accept as it is by now the language by inviting the co-chairs. We can revisit this when we see the L version. To be on the safe side, I think this is a good way forward, meanwhile, to make the invitation to the co-chairs. Actually, if I remember properly, the invitation from the open-ended to SBSTA to do this was also an invitation. No, it was not a request, formally speaking. But I believe, by the moment, if this can be a good way forward, we have to see this in the final plenary as an L document if by that time we have more clarity. So I invite you to go along with this formulation. Right? Switzerland.
Thanks a lot. First of all, SBSTA will close before the open-ended working group here in Geneva. So we can invite the open-ended working group whatever we want, because it will meet after the SBSTA closes in Geneva. Secondly, it is our understanding that the global biodiversity framework is not yet closed when we leave here Geneva, and it is our understanding that therefore the open-ended working group will continue its work at the COP because it has the mandate to deliver and present that at the COP, and in the COP it has time to finalize its work. And therefore, I think we should be clear about that. We have to be practical about that, about what we are going to do. If you want to be able to agree, so we have to be practical about organizing our work. If you want to be able to agree at the COP on a global biodiversity framework, which includes, amongst other things, goals, targets, and headline indicators, this is what we all aspire to agree upon at the COP, then we need a space to look at these three things together. And if you are not able to look at these things together, we risk that one body is working on headline indicators which are not linked anymore on targets that are evolving in parallel. So it has to be one body, one group that is looking at these things together. And we have been establishing the open-ended working group to deliver that global biodiversity framework. And we have decided that the SBSTA should provide an input into that work. And that's where we are now. We are now at the moment where the SBSTA has done tremendous work. I think we should not underestimate the work that has been done. And this work has now to feed into the open-ended working group together with possible intersessional work that can take place between now and the COP, so that the open-ended working group then at the COP can look at all these different things together. And therefore, I think we should be specific in inviting the open-ended working group to use the work of here in Geneva and the possible intersessional work. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will follow this, even different interpretations we may have. So the paragraph will disappear with the invitation of the open-ended, but the last part of the long paragraph will read, and to make the outcome available for consideration by the working group on post-2020, as Switzerland proposed. And the Conference of the Parties. Right? Okay. So with this, I invite you to accept this formulation. It's a long paragraph. I think we are in agreement. I see two requests from the floor. Please, we need to move. We have very little time to finish with the following paragraphs and then the other CRP document. I have Peru and Chile on the list. Perú tiene la palabra.
Peru has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't intend to drag on the review that you're waiting for. But according to what Switzerland said, this workshop could focus on headline indicators, and if it limits its work to this, we could get a good result, because the work and effort invested in this matrix has been considerable. Thank you very much.
Peru.
Thank you. Peru, Chile, and Argentina. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very briefly, I'd like to confirm that we should add the word scientific, because in the two readings we didn't hear it, and we agree that regional balance is very important. We would also add the gender balance. Thank you. Thank you, Chile. We could also include these balances in this technical scientific group. Argentina has the floor.
Gracias,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. would like to express our support of the proposal that you made with the amendments made by Switzerland. And we believe that the comments by Chile and Peru have been taken into account in full. And we see that the approaches tend to converge. And we quite agree with the vision that this should finalize with the convergence in the working group. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's then consider this section of the document as approved. And I invite you to go on to Appendix 1. China has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'd like to support the proposal, and just a very minor concern. I would like to, maybe of course it's up to the Secretary to make a decision or a discretion of the Chair of SBSTTA and the Secretariat. That is for, should there be any deadline for nomination of the experts, and also for the finalization of such kind of proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, China. I understand that, well, usually for conveying this kind of workshops, there is a notification asking for times. I will let this on the hands of the Secretariat to do it as soon as possible. We have only 4 months for the COP, so this should be very soon. Maybe when we see the L document, we can provide you with more details, but I leave it in the hands of the Secretariat. Thank you for reminding that and the urgency to start as soon as possible. Right. So with this, I invite you to move to Appendix 1, where we went through 3 paragraphs, and if I'm right, we just need to finish with the last 2 paragraphs to end with this document. So I open the floor on paragraph 4. Hold on. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. The Secretariat informed me that we still had some brackets in paragraph 3. If I remember right, this was proposed by Mexico, and I'd like to ask Mexico if we could delete these brackets. Mexico has the floor on paragraph 3.
Micrófono para México sobre
Microphone for Mexico concerning paragraph 3 of Appendix 1.
Por lo regular,
Normally, we would delete brackets. Could you clarify what is the result of our proposal on human rights?
I'll give the floor to the Secretariat to make a clarification. ¿Qué exactamente fue la...? Entiendo que México iba a revisar este párrafo, pero doy la palabra a la Secretaría.
I think Mexico wants the floor back. Maybe I don't need to clarify.
Micrófono para México.
sí, efectivamente.
Mexico, yes, we have it ready. We had to consult, and we can indeed take away the brackets. Excellent. It means paragraph 3 is now clean, and I'm asking for comments on paragraphs 4 and 5 so that we could conclude on this.
Tenemos a Colombia.
Colombia has the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we would like to propose a certain text for paragraph 4. We propose it has the following text.
Use and reporting of these health systems, which will require capacity building activities, technology transfer, and other support. The CBD Secretariat, together with organizations identified in the indicators metadata sheets as data reporters, such as GeoBond, IUCN, SIA, among others, will be providing guidelines and enhancing the capacities of parties to design and implement national monitoring systems to support the collection of data and the calculation of headline indicators. Gracias.
Por favor.
Thank you. Could you repeat? This is not a new paragraph 4. You are reformulating paragraph 4. Could you then read it out at dictation speed so that all delegates could have a clear understanding of the final form and if it can be acceptable? Thank you.
Micrófono para Colombia.
Microphone for Colombia.
So instead to start to facilitate that, we suggest to state clearly the development, use, and reporting of this headline and add component and complementary indicators at the national level are enabled by effective national biodiversity monitoring systems and other national information systems, which will require that part that I have read is an addition. Now we continue with the capacity building activities as is in the paragraph. And then we add technology transfer and we continue to, and other support. And then this part that I'm going to read is new and will read. The CBD Secretariat, together with organizations identified in the indicator metadata sheets as data reporters, such as GeoBond, IUCN, SIA, among others, will be providing guidelines and enhancing the capacities of parties to design and implement national monitoring systems to support the collection of data and the calculation of headline indicators.
Gracias, Colombia.
Thank you, Colombia.
We can go along with the proposal by Colombia. Is there any objections? Raise your hand. Otherwise, we will accept it. No. There are objections by Argentina. In order to save time, I suggest to put in brackets the suggestion and send it for the L document. Now I give the floor to Costa Rica. Costa Rica tiene la palabra.
I call on Costa Rica. Thank you very much, Chair. In fact, we have a proposal. It's similar to the one that has just been submitted by Colombia, and I'd like to read it out for your consideration. I'm on paragraph 4.
Perdón, Costa Rica. Si tiene...
Apologies. If it is similar, could we live with the Colombian proposal? Because otherwise we're going to have too many alternatives, and we would like to really make some headway here.
Ok, regáleme si es posible un momento para...
Could you just give me a couple seconds to discuss this?
Okay, sorry. Perdón, Costa Rica, pero...
Apologies, Costa Rica. Something has been pointed out to me by the Secretariat, and here we have to be extremely cautious. The operative part, where we are requesting the Executive Secretary to carry out actions, we've already seen it. We've already been there. Here in Appendix 2, it's the nature of the framework and the use of indicators. So to be requesting action is a little bit out of place here, I think. Conceptually, we have to be clear. What sort of framework do we want to have? How are we going to use the headline indicators? How can we use them? So to request action here in the text, I think is slightly misplaced here at this time. So please go ahead, Costa Rica. Thank you, Chair. And I understand fully what you are saying. But our proposal is along the lines of how important it is to have the means of implementation for the monitoring framework, for the indicators, and we consider that it's important to reflect this in the operative part. So if I could, I'd like to read out my proposal. Yes, please go ahead, says the Chair.
Thank you. It will be in paragraph 4, second line after in many countries at the end. So it will read, in this sense, developing countries parties will effectively use the headline indicator as well as the component and complementary indicators supported by the effective provision of adequate means of implementation in line with the provisions of the Convention, including the establishment of mechanisms to increase the capacity building and development and the technical and scientific cooperation to fill monitoring gaps.
Okay, I'm sorry for taking this time, but I'd like to reiterate again the nature of these paragraphs describing the elements for the framework and the use of indicators. But le pido a Costa Rica que lo vuelva a repetir.
I would ask Costa Rica to repeat it. We're going to keep it, but I would also like to invite you to have a look at the L3 paragraphs, because they're the ones that talk about what we have to do to be able to get to that point. What this document is describing is merely the structure of this proposal for the monitoring framework. How are we going to be able to use these indicators? How are we going to lead to capacity building? All of those issues are elsewhere, and they're partially covered in the L3 paper. So I would like to invite you to really focus on this part. It's really structural more than anything. It's not procedural, creating capacity building. How do we want to use the headline indicators? What sort of structure will this framework have? those, I would invite you not to mix up these themes. This is very accurate. And the part about how do we actually get to the point we want to reach, that is in another place. So Costa Rica, Secretariat was not able to get your proposal down entirely. So could you please repeat it? Yes, sir.
Since developing countries parties will effectively use the headline indicators, as well as the component and complementary indicators, supported by the effective provision of adequate means of implementation, in line with the provisions of the Convention, including the establishment of mechanisms to increase the capacity building and development, and technical and scientific cooperation to fill monitoring gaps. Full stop.
Gracias, Costa Rica.
Gracias.
Thank you, Costa Rica.
Selection of this paragraph. Raise your hand if otherwise it's included as it is with no brackets. Suiza?
Switzerland.
Suiza,
Thank you very much. Thank you also very much for explaining the relationship between that part and the L decision. Therefore, we also fully understand, of course, the motivation and the concern behind this proposal, but also, by the way, the proposal by Colombia. And we would suggest to take it up with brackets, and then with a mental note that we will have to look at it once we have solved the issue in a decision, because then it might be clear that we don't need it here. So thank you very much for your very helpful explanation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. So thank you very much. We will keep in brackets those and to think about it and to do this double check. Y espero que ayude a reflexionar tanto a Colombia como Costa Rica.
I hope it will help both Colombia and Costa Rica to reflect on this. If it's already reflected, that which you are proposing, if it's already in L, let's be as clear as possible about what sort of framework do we want? What is the structure going to be? How do we want to use it? How to reach that point we want to reach? That's to be covered in another document. For the time being, let's keep it in square brackets. I'd like to open the floor now for the last paragraph to try to finish up with this, but I do have a few requests. I've got Argentina, South Africa, and Canada. Please be as brief as you can. Argentina, please.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for your patience. We support the Costa Rican proposal because we think that it is not an operative proposal. Rather, it's a part of the description of how we are going to be able to use this in line with what the sentence already says in the original part of the paragraph. I just wanted to say that there is a subtlety here because the developing countries are not at the same level to be able to implement these indicators. So that's a subtlety, a nuance that should be maintained here. South Africa now, please.
Thank you, Chair. We just had a proposal on the original paragraph 4, which was simply the addition of the use compilation and use to facilitate the compilation and use. I think this is partly addressed in the intervention, the proposal made by Colombia, but we would need to consider that proposal more fully in the brackets, as well as the one by Costa Rica. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone opposes to just include compilation and use? If there is no opposition to this small amendment, that can be included with no brackets. I don't see any hand. Again, thank you very much. Now I open the floor. Well, I see I have Germany.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. We would like to add in the first line of paragraph 4, after capacity building, and then add and development, and follow up with activities. So it would.
Thank you, Germany. I think that's understandable. Is capacity building and development activities, right? I think everybody agrees on this point. I don't see any objection. So thank you very much. I open the floor for comments on paragraph 5, the last one. I see no request. I see Colombia.
Yes, just to include in the last line, after complementary and other national indicators. Thank you.
Gracias, Colombia.
Thank you, Colombia. I do not have any other requests for the floor, which means that we can adopt the changes to this document, CRP 11, and we would request the Secretary to prepare the L document. Thank you.
With this, I invite you to move to our next CRP document. Let me see my notes. Yes. This is CRP 12. Just hold on a second, please. Right. Colleagues, you will recall that the contact group on biodiversity and health met 3 times. In view of the work that remained to be done on the annex, I established a Friends of the Chair group, co-chaired by Ms. Brown and Ms. von Weisinger, to find a way forward. They met twice yesterday. To facilitate the work, the co-chairs prepared a short non-paper addressing procedural issues and outlining future steps to continue our work, taking into account the progress made at this meeting. Now I invite Ms. Brown or Ms. von Weisinger to report on the progress on this report. So you have the floor, Finland. Marina.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Helena Brown and I had the honor to co-chair 2 meetings of the Friends of the Chair yesterday. And during these 2 sessions, we reviewed the short non-paper prepared for the Friends of the Chair, published on the Substar webpage under Element 4 as a non-paper on biodiversity and health version 4. There was overall expression of support to this non-paper by 19 parties attending the meeting, 19 parties attending the first meeting, 16 parties attending the second meeting. In our deliberation, we agreed on almost all paragraphs. In the preambular paragraphs, there is only 1 paragraph bracket and the 3 brackets in a paragraph that relates to genetic resources that could not be determined in our Friends of the Chair, giving the ongoing discussions on digital sequence information, among others. 1 paragraph is bracketed in the operational section. At the end of our second meeting yesterday, we agreed on the way forward to request Executive Secretary to complete the work pursuant to the decision 14/4 on targeted messages and a draft global action plan on biodiversity and health. We clarified the future steps to continue our work on this agenda item, as requested and as reflected in the paragraph 5 of the CRP we have before us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Ms. Brown and Ms. von Weisinger and the parties that participated at the Friends of the Chair for all your hard work. I think it's a very good outcome. A short document. I hope we can make it in the next less than 20 minutes. Now, let's go to revise this document paragraph by paragraph. So I open the floor for comments on the first part. I have Belgium.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to make a statement on this paper. Belgium was active in the Friends of the Chair group on agenda item 9, Biodiversity and Health, and expresses its gratitude to the co-leads and to the participants of the Friends of the Chair group for the hard and constructive work that led to this outcome. Nevertheless, while we will not challenge the outcome of the Friends of the Chair group, Belgium wishes to express its disappointment on the outcome of the negotiations on the subject of biodiversity and health at this meeting. In particular, we are disappointed that the draft Global Action Plan for Biodiversity and Health will not be presented to the Conference of the Parties at its 15th meeting, but its treatment will be postponed to COP16. We feel that it will be very difficult to justify the postponement of a global action plan of biodiversity and health of all subjects to our people at home at a time when a global pandemic of possible zoonotic origin is still raging. Viruses don't wait for politics to act. So unfortunately for Belgium, this outcome cannot be called a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium, for your statement and concerns. I still have hope because if we see when we go to the end of the document, we are requesting the Executive Secretary to work on this and to follow the decision we have from the COP on this matter and to present a version. So, but we take note of your concerns. So I open the floor for comments on the first preambular paragraph, and I have Japan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since I'd like to thank all the co-lead and co-chair and all the participants for working on this document. However, my delegation could not participate in part of the discussion yesterday because of the clash between the meetings and scheduling reasons. So I may need to take the floor when it comes to the relevant part of the draft report. I just want to say in advance, thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I was looking for you at the end of your intervention. I finally saw you physically. Thank you, Japan. So I open the floor for comments on preamble paragraph 1. I don't see any requests. Paragraph 2 start with recalling Sharm el-Sheikh. I don't see any request. Let's move to next paragraph, noting the resolution 4813. I have the U.S. non-party.
Thank you, co-lead. I'll be extremely brief. The United States would propose a slight change to this paragraph to just make a very factual recitation of the title of the resolution in question. So it would read, noting the resolution 48/13, delete on and replace that word with entitled, and then to put the title of the resolution in question in quotes, which is the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, and the rest as it is. So it's just a very minor change, but it's quite important to us. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. Is any party supporting this suggestion? I see New Zealand. Thank you very much. That's included. It's a formality on this. Thank you very much. Now, comments on, I see China. Okay. comments on the next paragraph. China, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair.
So there is a problem.
Okay, the problem solved. I'm so sorry to take the floor at this time, because after the extraordinary efforts of the Friends of Co-Chair meeting 2 times yesterday, we have succeeded to reach an agreement on several paragraphs of this document. And we did not want to see this document getting changed at this time. And we propose to stick to the current wording instead of being modified in any manner. Thank you.
Thank you, China. Let me see. Thank you very much for your time. So the concrete suggestion from China is not to change, to respect the agreements of the Friends of the Chair and not to change at least the proposed amendments to this paragraph. Is that correct? For this paragraph, then even I know that New Zealand support the amendment. If we can go back and to retain the original language in order to move forward. Is that agreeable for the room to go back to the original language? New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and we respect your suggested way forward. However, we will make a suggestion that may be easier for everyone, and we put it out there, which is instead of the noting formulation that we have, we replace it with a recognising formulation, which would be recognising that a clean, healthy and sustainable environment is important for the enjoyment of human rights. We think this would be an appropriate insertion and would seek the views of parties. Thank you.
Can I see that formulation is acceptable to China? No. I understand that was also considered during the Friends of the Chair. Thanks for your intent to help. And so my request is if we can go back to leave the document as it is now. I understand they discussed that and they reached an agreement on that paragraph. So if it's okay for the floor, for the room, I invite to go back to the original language and to continue. I see no objections to go back to the original text. I see Australia.
Could we request to have that wording bracketed?
Okay, let's move on to leave the amendments in brackets. So I invite for comments on the following paragraphs. Tengo a México.
Mexico. Can you hear me? Chair, I would like to repeat the request that the text be left as it was discussed yesterday. It was a fairly lengthy discussion. The need to include this approach, this resolution, was discussed, and we have the appreciated support of China to be able to come to these agreements. Also, the comment by the United Kingdom to maintain this text. So I would, in turn, like to ask colleagues if they could consider this so that we don't leave it in square brackets. The Chair, thank you very much. And I would like to invite you to stick to the spirit of the work which was done by the group of the Friends of the Chair in this area. I have a number of requests. I hope that we can continue to move along. Switzerland, followed by the UK.
Microphone to Switzerland, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We would like just to make a more horizontal proposal here. We had the impression that this is a text that is pretty clean and that we can finalize it as you try to do that. Our suggestion would be, I don't know how long you want to meet, continue work until we make a break. Our suggestion would be that you try to finalize it before the break, and if things get too complicated, that we take the same approach as we did this morning on the marine issues, saying, because if we are not ready to adopt it here now as it is in the clean, but if many new proposals come in, that we take the same approach. Let's invite parties to make these submissions until this evening, and then send the document compiled with all these amendments to the COP. Thank you very much. But we hope, of course, that before the break, we'll be able to rather clean the remaining brackets than adding new ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. I will try to make something hybrid. If we can respect the spirit of this document, we leave as it is, and maybe I would like to confirm if we want to keep the few brackets we have already on the document. So I try to make this intent. So we have in page 2 one bracket around the taking note of the Global Action Plan, making reference to IPBES, and also some brackets in the following paragraph in any form on digital sequence information. I know it was a long discussion on this, so that's why we have brackets there. There is also brackets on paragraph 3 on the GEF document. Can we leave all the remaining paragraphs clean and only maintain these few brackets? Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, I want to congratulate the two co-leads for their wonderful work on trying to find a way out on the situation that, unfortunately, the Secretariat put the parties on. But I will request that we put in brackets also paragraph 5, because we started have the contact groups and small delegations. I cannot be in 2 meetings at the same time, so I was not there when this paragraph was discussed, and my delegations has some comments to it, so I would request the bracket in paragraph 5 as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I hope you will have the opportunity to send comments when we see this document in L format. I hope we can release them because it's the action to be done to continue with the work. I have the UK followed by Egypt.
Thank you, Chair. And just clarifying, you talked about are we happy to maintain all the text we have in brackets? Still in brackets, we're happy with that going forward. But I just wanted to clarify what had happened to the paragraph on Resolution 4813. Is that paragraph now in brackets? No. Well, our preference would be to retain it in brackets. Really, we preferred the original, well, the amendment made by New Zealand, and which reflected, I think, the recent language from UNEA. And given that there are divisions in the room, and that is recently an adopted language, that seemed the best way forward to us. And I think that was supported by Australia. But if there isn't any sort of consensus on that, and there doesn't seem to be, we would rather have it, or both formulations in brackets. Thank you, Chair. And I did make these points in the Friends of the Chair, and I did say that we had concerns over this language, and we may need to bring it back in plenary. So it wasn't that we necessarily agreed with that language last night. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, my intent was to go back to the original version of the paragraph, as you said, on this mention to resolution. But then I understood that with amendments proposed by the US and support by New Zealand, Australia want to keep the amendments in brackets. So the easy way is to go back to the original language as agreed by the Friends of the Chair. I see at least in Japan is objecting, so we need to keep the amendments in brackets in that paragraph, right? So, and my proposal is to consider this paragraph with brackets and also to maintain paragraphs of the first paragraph on page 2, the one on the next following paragraph, and to maintain brackets in paragraph 3 and on paragraph 5 as requested by Brazil. That's where we are. If you have any additional comment on this, I'll invite you to approve the document with these amendments. In order to save time, we have to finish very shortly with the interpretation. We're exceeding the time. I'll give the floor to Japan on this point. Microphone to Japan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as indicated earlier, my delegation would like to make some proposal, but we are conscious of time. We are happy to submit it in specific amendment to the Secretariat, and we can further discuss on that. And we have another meeting starting from 1:30, so yes.
Is that in session very long, or can you just say it and send it? But for the knowledge of the room, please.
Thank you, if I may. My delegation would like to make some adjustment to the 2 of the last preambula relating to the DSI and benefit sharing issue. First, we are not touching the issue of DSI now because discussion is ongoing. But I want to add the last, at the end of the paragraph, starting with emphasizing the critical role, in line with the convention, then the addition will be following, and mutually supportive manner with other relevant international agreements and instruments. This is a language taken from the Nagoya Protocol. So yes, we are important to be in line with convention, but we have to take care of the other relevant agreement and instrument. And also, in this connection, I'd like to put the bracket around the third line, including in the context and so on until the end of the line become pandemics. And also on the last preamble, I would suggest that in the third line, after the need to, I would suggest delete ensure. Delete ensure alignment and be replaced with be consistent with. And another addition is does not run counter to the objectives and delete provisions. Also, this is taken from the Nagoya Protocol, so that the decision is in line with the agreed text of the convention, and to find a balance between the need to have the access and benefit sharing, and also the on one hand, and the need to respond to the pandemics on the other. So on the last part would read, and the need to, noting the effort, noting ongoing effort to draft and so on, and then, the same time, the last part would read, and the need to be consistent with and does not run counter to the objectives of the convention and its protocol. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. My suggestion is to include your language with brackets, so everybody will be able to see it in the L version. I'm wondering if you have additional language to include. We understand that it was a small group of friends of the chair, so you should have the opportunity. And I would like to, any new insertion, if there are more, be including brackets in order to approve the document and to be turned into an L. And we are very limited in time, so I have Egypt, followed by Namibia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to take much time. We approve the way forward now. If any new ideas, they can be sent straight to the Secretariat, but we should have a document ready for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. Namibia?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. This document is indeed a very important document for us, particularly the fact that it deals with biodiversity and health in the context of what we're going through. It is the view of Namibia that in terms of the last paragraph that starts with noting the ongoing efforts to draft and negotiate a World Health Organization convention, agreement, or other international instruments to strengthen pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, we would like to insert some text in order to ensure that we accommodate the references that we would like to return in terms of DSI. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, after the word response, we would like to add the following text, and I'll read in dictator speech, as well as ongoing negotiations to amend international health regulations of 2005, and then the sentence can continue with and the need to ensure alignment with the provisions of the conventions and its protocols. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is our intervention on this particular point. We have more interventions that we would like to make, but that is on the operational paras, and would seek your indulgence and guidance for that. Thank you so much.
I would really like to, this insertion will be in brackets. I would really like to close this document, but I don't know how many insertions Namibia has for the operational paragraphs. I just mentioned that so far in the operational paragraphs, we have paragraph 3 in brackets and paragraph 5 in brackets. I don't know if there are many, or can you just go quickly? All of us, we need to close this. I would like to approve this document with all these amendments that you will see on the L version. Let me know, Namibia, if it's just one or two very quickly, or will take long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. It's only 2 insertions, particularly in operational para 1D and then in operational para 2A and 5A. So with your consideration, I can move forward in order to give these submissions.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. So in terms of operational para 1D, we would like to put the insertion to strengthen compliance with international, that whole sentence, and after from the utilization of genetic resources, we would like to insert and associated information in the relevant health sectors. That is for 1D. And is that captured? So if we continue to para 2, we would like to insert in para 2A, to take into account in their work, the insertion would be and outcomes, and then it will continue the linkages and continue. We would like to delete after the comma and then after the decision, we would like to add the wording as well as the need to recognize socioeconomic inequities existing between developing and developed countries, particularly the health inequities and also the principles of equity and solidarity. I think, Mr. Chairperson, for now, that is the last one that I have, and I will of course send this to the Secretariat as well, is in 5A, if you allow me. In 5A, we would like to propose the following wording after relevant stakeholders and prioritize the issues of equity, particularly through fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of utilization of the genetic resources and associated information. I think, Mr. Chairperson, those are the only insertions from our side that we would like to propose for consideration. And of course, even if it's bracketed, we are comfortable with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Namibia. All these insertions, you will see it in brackets. I have 2 requests from the floor from NGOs and non-parties. I apologize. We don't have time to take your points. So with this, we invite the floor to approve CRP 12 with these amendments, and then you will see in the final plenary reflect on the L version. So with this, CRP 12 is approved. And with this also, we finish our 4th plenary session of SBSTA. Thank you very much, and have a good lunch and the rest of the day. Thank you.